Participate in team meetings or schedule a meeting with your supervisor. Team meetings or individual meetings are a time to discuss new information and different points of view. If ethical dilemmas already exist, scheduling a meeting can bring new ideas to light and team members can provide support to one another. Sharing information about patient care problems that you're having can help you understand how to handle a situation and avoid future ethical issues. Reinforce patient education. Patients must be educated and informed. If a patient has complex questions or does not seem to understand information, they may need to be re-educated. If an aide observes this situation, he or she should report this need to their supervisor so that a nurse or therapist can provide the education. Know and follow Medicare regulations. Following Medicare regulations that apply to your job is not always an easy task. However, it's critical you understand what is covered by Medicare and what is not. Having a working knowledge of these regulations helps you ensure that your patient and your agency do not suffer negative consequences. Liability. Are you confident you understand the word liability? To be clear, to be liable is to be legally responsible for your actions. Just as your agency has a responsibility to ensure that you are trained appropriately, you have a responsibility to follow that training. Common legal quandaries in home health might involve patient privacy, abuse or neglect of the patient by the family or a caregiver, an error in or incomplete documentation, fraud, or theft. As home health staff, you have a responsibility to know and follow agency policy and procedure, as well as document your care properly. Do not assume that ignorance of law or policy will be adequate defense if something unexpected happens. It's important to realize what's expected of you when you care for others in their place of residence. Aides, nurses, therapists, and social workers must understand their unique and specific scope of responsibility. This means you need to understand what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, and what you're expected to do when caring for patients. For a home health aide, it's important to know that your services must include hands-on personal care. The home health aide can also perform some incidental services that are beneficial for the patient's welfare, but the visit must include providing personal care. Bathing, dressing, grooming, feeding, assisting with elimination or transferring, and assisting with self-administered medication are examples of covered services. Aide services must be part-time or intermittent, reasonable and necessary, hands-on personal care, help maintain patients' health and/or facilitate treatment. For a home health nurse, therapist, or social worker, you can face some difficult ethical quandaries. Let's review some areas that are common tough spots for nurses. There are times when the nurse receives an order to admit a home health patient from a hospital discharge planner. The patient needs care, and the Medicare requirements for care must be met, such as that a patient must be homebound and have the need for skilled nursing care. It's important to understand Medicare's definition of homebound and skilled nursing care to understand whether a patient should be receiving home health benefits under Medicare. Homebound, according to Medicare, means the patient must either need assistance through supportive devices or another person because of injury or illness in order to leave their place of residence, or have a condition such that leaving the home is medically contraindicated. If the patient meets these conditions, he or she still needs to meet two additional requirements, which are: there must exist a normal inability to leave home, and leaving home must require a considerable and taxing effort. Understand that if a patient leaves home regularly, even if it requires great effort, he or she is not homebound. The confinement to the home must be related to their medical condition. If a patient is able to leave the home, he or she cannot simply choose to stay in the home in order to qualify for Medicare home care services. The patient also cannot be in a place in which services your agency would provide are already provided. To protect yourself from any potential liability issues, be sure to clearly document the following when providing information regarding Medicare eligibility. The functional limitation that restricts the patient's mobility. This is an objective but broad description of the patient's limitation which correlates to functional limitations. The medical or physical reason for the limitations. The patient must be homebound because of the effects of an illness or injury. Impact of the limitations on the patient's activity. This details the specifics of the patient's situation. Include the use of assistive devices or the help of another person and detail any considerable or taxing effort. Document the exact reasons, such as requires 2 people to assist with 12 stairs needing to be negotiated to leave the home, or unable to ambulate more than 5 feet without severe shortness of breath. Absences from home, both the amount and the reasons. This supports the fact that the patient is confined to the home. In order to meet the Medicare requirements and for your agency to receive reimbursement, a patient being treated must also require skilled nursing services. A skilled nursing service is a service that must be provided by a registered nurse or a licensed practical nurse under the supervision of a registered nurse. It's important to understand that a service is not considered a skilled nursing service merely because it is being performed by a nurse. Skilled nursing can include a variety of situations, such as when it requires the skills of a nurse to perform teaching to the patient or caregiver, perform complex care, assess the situation in regards to the primary diagnosis, and many other examples. The skilled nursing service must be reasonable and necessary to the diagnosis and treatment of the patient's illness or injury within the context of the patient's unique medical condition. Home health staff are also required to report unsafe patient conditions. If you find that the patient is being abused or neglected in their residence, it is your legal responsibility to report this to your agency and potentially to the local Adult Protective Services organization. Because home health staff work in a team and also very independently, you must understand your job scope and responsibilities. Discuss with your managers and agency leaders to ensure you are clear where these lines lie. It's also critical to learn and understand agency policy and procedure for patient care. It is expected that you know this, and if an adverse or unintended event occurs, claiming you weren't aware of the policy does not get you off the hook. Plus, knowing policy and procedure helps to ensure adverse events don't happen at all, which of course is the ultimate goal. A very important aspect to guarding against legal troubles is proper documentation. Documentation that is incomplete or shows discrepancies will not hold up in court. It is your responsibility to document accurately and in a timely manner. Do not backdate or write a time or date that is different than when you are documenting or caring for a patient. Ensure your documentation is factual and based on objective observations and events. If an adverse event happens, it should be documented as well. The following 2 scenarios are intended for home health aides. Watch what happens and think about what you would do in their situation.
There you go. There you go. All right, it's time for me to go. Is there anything else I can do for you?
One more thing. Would you open that jewelry box over there on the dresser, please?
Of course.
There's a necklace in there.
Of course. Wow, it's beautiful. Would you like to wear it?
I want you to have it as a token of my appreciation.
Oh.
It's an antique, and it's worth quite a bit.
Oh, you are so sweet. I can't accept it, but thank you.
Oh, I insist.
I really appreciate it, but under my agency's policy, I cannot accept gifts like this.
They don't have to know. Please, I'd really be upset if you don't take it. I want you to have it. I won't say anything.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just can't accept it.
Again, how difficult. While it may seem harmless to take a token of appreciation from a patient who's insistent, review your agency's policies on receiving gifts. You might want to inform your supervisor so the agency can contact the patient and inform her of the policy. Home health care staff should not take any gifts and should notify their agency if necessary, so a supervisor can call the patient and explain that gifts are not allowed. There are many reasons why taking a gift might be a bad idea, even when it might appear to be an insignificant item. The item might be a family heirloom, or you may be accepting a gift of great value, and ethically, this would put you in a conflict of interest. It's important to remember that while relationships with patients can form and be rewarding, you provide care to many patients and are employed by an agency that has policies in place for good reason. Here's another scenario for the home health aide. Watch and think about the issues that arise.
Hi, Tom. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay.
Okay, great. Well, let's get your bath started.
I don't feel like a bath today, just like the other day. Would you like to play cards?
No, I'd like to get you going on your bath.
I really don't feel like being cared for today. As a matter of fact, I don't want your help bathing me anymore. I'm going to ask my brother to help me at nighttime. Can't you just sit down and spend some time with me? Will you?
Tom, my visits must include your personal care. If every once in a while you refuse, that's fine, but it can't be often and it cannot be all the time.
How about if you wrote down that you gave me a bath every time that you came here when you're supposed to? I'll go along with that. And that way you can spend some time with me and we can play cards.
I'm sorry, Tom, I can't do that. Part of your treatment plan includes personal care, and that's part of the Medicare's coverage. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to speak to my supervisor about this.